need you to stay. Help me, acid, show me the way.
This girl is on an LSD trip. The music, a song of praise to LSD. A song of praise to acid. The hippies, the flower people, see LSD as an aid to self-knowledge, a key to the closed doors of the mind, perhaps a sacrament to the God they seek. The hippies use LSD as a vehicle unto themselves. The results are disturbing to society, but if nothing else, the hippies seem to have found some sort of peace, some refuge from a world which they reject. Not only do the hippies turn off the world, they also scorn its warnings and laws against LSD. They just do not believe those researchers who say LSD is dangerous. But the society the hippie rejects cannot ignore the ever-widening use of LSD by the non-hippie, especially the college student. Across the nation, college teachers like Dr. Nathan Back of the School of Pharmacy at the State University of New York in Buffalo sound a warning.
In view of the fact that we know very little as to how LSD works on the body, both its physical effects as well as mental effects, the increased use of LSD by our society should be viewed with great concern and alarm.
Millbrook, New York, home and temple of the high priest of acid, Dr. Timothy Leary, the ex-Harvard professor who claims that perhaps 3 million Americans have taken the acid trip. The mystic who uses LSD to find God and may well be the first acid martyr. I asked Tim Leary if the acid experience has changed him.
Well, LSD has changed me religiously. I was a smart aleck, Harvard professor, bourbon-drinking atheist, intellectual, before I took LSD. Now I'm God intoxicated. Has it changed me in my personality? I don't think so. And I want to make this clear. LSD is no instant psychoanalysis. It's not going to change your television personality. It's not going to make you a better game player. There are no guarantees here of any change in personality. I don't think I've changed. What LSD does, it gives you more energy. So I play out the Timothy Leary game on a broader canvas. I've got more energy available to me. I'm more turned on, so more people listen to me. But I think I still have the same old faults, the same old selfishness, the same old tendency to deceive myself. You see, what's happening in the United States today, as millions of people, particularly young people, are taking LSD, they're just turning off. They won't make war for you anymore. They're a dropout generation. They're talking about flower power. They're forming, as we have here in Millbrook, their own little religious cults. Your rock and roll bands, most of them, believe it or not, are little religious cults. And the songs they're singing are religious, oriental, mystic.
Acid, show me the way. Look out, baby, my blood's turning cold. Come on, love, right into my soul.
I say to the young kids, form your own religion. Do as it's always been done. Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
And turn on they do, using the acid to blow their minds, seeking within themselves. There are 10 million different LSD trips. There is a thin line between the good trip and the bad trip.
To make me understand.
You have to approach LSD with trembling and with fear and with love to use it for harmony and beauty. What's going on in the United States today is a revolution in consciousness facilitated by these psychedelic chemicals. I frankly don't think that the human being is ready for LSD. As a matter of fact, I don't think the human being is ready for fire. But the trouble is, LSD is here. And what are we going to do about it? Should we pass a law against fire and say only doctors can have fire? Should we pass a law against LSD and say only doctors can take this trip to the divine process, go out of their minds, use this inner microscope? Of course we can, because it's here and it's going to be used. That's the problem.
That indeed is the problem. But while the doctors admit that LSD may be useful in the treatment of alcoholism, homosexuality, and mental illness, they warn that they know almost nothing about it. Dr. Sidney Cohen, Chief of Psychiatric Service at Wadsworth Hospital in Los Angeles, has himself taken LSD.
I think that the juvenile, random, frivolous taking of LSD in a party setting without supervision is dangerous and is doing a good deal of harm. Some of the harm being the fact that we can't look at it studiously. We certainly are now prevented from ever incorporating this into our culture because the feelings of the populace have been polarized into great aversion and law passing concerning LSD. Others still think that this is the answer. I would say that it's somewhere in between, and this is what I would like to implore, that we try to look at the LSD scene as one of promise and potential, but also one of possible danger and despair.
There is much evidence that the lifeblood of the LSD user can be changed, that the chromosomes in the blood can be damaged by the acid. And it is the chromosomes that carry genetic information from one generation to the next. It is the chromosomes that determine whether the next generation conforms to our normality. The LSD user tends to reject the warning or reply that the benefits of LSD outweigh its dangers. LSD researchers like Dr. Kurt Hirschhorn, chief of the Division of Medical Genetics at Mount Sinai Hospital, New York, have few doubts about LSD and chromosomal damage.
This cell has 2 broken chromosomes. The one just below the middle of the cell has 2 breaks in it, while the one just to the right of it has a single break. These findings are rather similar to those that have been previously described by other doctors who have taken cells from normal individuals and cultured them in the presence of LSD. In this case, we have taken the cells from a patient who has been on LSD and added no further LSD to the culture. Findings like these have been described from patients who have received radiation, who have had various viral diseases, and who have leukemia and other cancers. It is also known that such breaks, when produced by radiation, can be followed by an increased incidence of leukemia in the patients and other cancers, as well as in the production of congenital malformations in the offspring of such patients, as well as in their children's children.
At the Children's Hospital in Buffalo, New York, there has been considerable research into the effects of LSD on the chromosomes. Dr. Mayman Cohen is director of psychogenetics.
The danger, or the potential danger, to the LSD user, not only to himself, but to his offspring, is real. And until we have all of the answers in, which will come only after much more extensive research, it is advisable that LSD be put on the shelf as a very dangerous and noxious poison. Children born to LSD users, if the egg or the sperm is damaged by the LSD, may give rise to a whole host of genetic or congenital abnormalities at birth. Most of these chromosomal abnormalities are usually associated with mental retardation, as well as other physical deformities. Perhaps the most widespread known of all of the chromosomal abnormalities is the mongoloid child that has an extra chromosome. it is possible that these individuals using LSD can cause chromosomal damage to their germ cells, which will not be detected in themselves, but will only be detected in the physical deformities of their offspring.
This is the heart of the LSD user's dilemma. Has he the right to play acid roulette with his children? The probing into LSD continues. Associate Professor of Pharmacology at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, New York, Dr. Murray Jarvik, experiments on monkeys.
We were interested in seeing what effect LSD would have on visual discrimination performance in monkeys and also on memory. It's been shown by a number of investigators, not only me, that the drug does have very strange effects in animals. Under some circumstances, it impairs performance, and under others, it actually improves performance. But a great deal more work remains to be done before we can really understand what the drug does and how it is doing it.
Dr. Jarvik wants to know how LSD affects the rhesus monkey. He injects the drug into monkeys to find out whether he can duplicate man's LSD experience in the animal closest to man. Dr. Jarvik says that the LSD effects can be seen in the rhesus monkey, yet LSD remains an enigma.
Performance on a test of short-term memory was impaired by rather small doses of LSD in our monkeys. We used what's known as a delayed alternation test and found that as little as 5 gamma, that is 5 millionths of a gram per kilogram, was capable of impairing performance in these animals. On the other hand, other investigators have found that very low doses of LSD would improve performance in certain types of visual discrimination tests, inability of an animal to discriminate flicker from steady light. The most important thing that is still unexplained is the mechanism whereby this drug produces its effects. Despite a tremendous amount of research that's gone into this, and there must be well over 1,000 research papers on the effects of LSD, we still don't know what the basic mechanism of action of this drug is in the brain.
This is Bellevue Psychiatric Hospital, New York. More than 250 LSD users have been treated for mental disturbances in Bellevue's wards. Yet the champions of LSD question the very definition of mental illness, rationalizing that one man's psychotic is another man's mystic. Dr. William Frosch of Bellevue's Psychiatry Department.
Here at Bellevue, in the last 2.5 years, we've seen a fairly large number of admissions of patients who come into the hospital, usually shortly after they've taken lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. In the 2.5 years, we've seen an average of about 10 per month, and this has been fairly consistent. So we've seen a total of approximately 250 patients in that time. Of the 10 a month who come in, about 2 or 3, that is a quarter of them, come in after their first trip with LSD, after their first experience with the drug. The others have had more experience, another quarter have had up to 5 trips, and the remainder come in after as many as 200 or 300 trips on LSD. About half of them come in with fairly acute psychiatric pictures, and these are either the direct result of the drug. For example, somebody becomes slightly confused under the influence of the drug and they wander up Fifth Avenue against traffic and is picked up by the police and then brought into the hospital. Occasionally, patients under the direct influence of the drug may, in response to unusual thoughts stimulated by it, may think they can fly, may try to go out of a window, or may in some other way endanger themselves or others.
You know, I took this stuff, and I was terribly, terribly frightened. And
These people belong to a Greenwich Village group called Encounter, a group dedicated to reforming drug users. They all know the dangers of LSD. Now, for this investigation, they recall the agony of recurrence, of reliving the acid hallucination long after LSD has left the bloodstream.
I was laying in bed and I was trying to go to sleep, and I opened my eyes. And all of a sudden the window in the room disappeared. And the room was just filled with bright lights. And I was completely paranoid. I was, you know, I didn't know what to do, and I just laid there and shivered. I was really... To me, it seemed like it lasted for hours.
Did you know what was happening? I mean, did you know it was a recurrence or what?
Yeah, I knew it was a recurrence. I knew it was happening after. You know, when it happened, I just opened my eyes and it just hit me.
How many recurrences like this have you had since that trip 8 months ago?
I'd say about 8.
About 8?
Yeah. I had one, I was at my girlfriend's apartment, and I was sitting down watching television. And she has an antenna that sits on top of the TV, and it started to get up and dance around.
Did you enjoy any of this?
No, I was completely frightened, because I knew that I wasn't taking LSD. And I wasn't getting high. I hadn't been getting high for quite a while.
I've had about, I should think, 10 recurrences. But what bothered me was having them on the job, because, you know, I would be working and suddenly, oh, Jesus, you know, and I would drop whatever I had, and this meant like graduates and syringes and surgeon's tools, crash on the floor. I'd drop them, and I would have to usually go run into the bathroom, because I found, like, you know, relieving myself would get my mind off all the bullshit. After that, I would have to start pulling my hair very hard.
The more you take the drugs, the more you mess up your life. The more you mess up your life, the more you take drugs. But I think through encounter, people learn to cope, and they find that without the drugs, it is a much better world.
It's like playing with a shotgun. And personally, I don't want to die. That's why I stopped taking drugs. Stopped taking LSD.
Dr. Daniel Casriel, medical superintendent of a drug rehabilitation center on Staten Island, New York.
DATOP is many things. It is a non-profit corporation for the rehabilitation of addicts. It is a therapeutic community run almost exclusively by ex-addicts who help themselves and others to get well. Here in DATOP, we have perhaps a half a dozen or a dozen people who have used LSD. We treat them exactly the same as we treat the other type of chemical users. The method of treatment is primarily a group interaction.
They made that whole scene down the village with, you know, peyote, mescaline, marijuana, morning glory seeds, and the whole rest of it. But the whole scene is just that, man, because, you know, like, I never had any friends really in school at all. And down there, it's easier. You know, what do you have to do to be hip? You just got to use as much as anybody else is using, and you're accepted. It's much easier to get accepted there. You don't have to try hard, you know?
You don't have to be a person. You don't have to be yourself. All you have to do is use a drug and say a couple of words you heard somebody else say, like mind, consciousness expansion.
Yeah. And then you've got a good excuse. Then you've got a really beautiful excuse. Well, I'm using it to find out the inner meanings of life, you know. They said that you could see inside yourself and all things like that. And I guess that's what they're really looking for. They're trying to, you know, find out who they were through the use of the drug, which I guess you really, you know, I'm sure you can't ever do.
Yeah, one of the fellows was telling me once that he had a friend that took a trip on that, and he actually believed, I guess this is how it works on your mind, that he actually believed that he could stop a car, and this was in his neighborhood, and he ran in front of this car, and naturally, you know, like he got wasted, you know, and the fellow died.
Dr. Casriel is outspoken about the dangers of LSD.
LSD is a very dangerous drug. To me, it is much more dangerous than heroin. And certainly, as LSD becomes more in vogue, you'll see greater and greater problems with it. I've been called upon to evaluate a boy who murdered while under the influence of LSD. I've known people who committed suicide under the influence of LSD. And I've known many who have become psychotic weeks and months after having used LSD. And even for those who do not become psychotic, those who have habituated themselves with the use of LSD seem to be changed and different. They are emotionally flat to the observer, even though introspectively they say they have tremendous feelings. They don't seem to be able to relate emotionally to other human beings. And what's even more frightening, they don't seem to care to relate to other human beings.
Richard Lynch is an actor. Until June this year, he was also an LSD user.
On June the 28th, 1967, I had strolled into the park of Central Park, and with a half a gallon of gasoline, I set myself on fire under the influence of LSD. I have had quite a few LSD experiences. When I attempted my last trip, I had just finished a screen test with Columbia Motion Pictures, and my career was flowering. I was a prosperous, promising young actor. If you would ever tell me that I would go into Central Park and try to burn myself to death, I would say that you were out of your mind. If you've taken your last, what you call your last LSD trip, and you really want to be hip, well, dig it, man. Be hip. Lay off it, because it does affect the mind. I'm a perfect example of what LSD can do to the human mind.
I'm Tim Knight. During the course of filming this investigation into LSD, I took my own acid trip. It was important to do that, important to get a fuller, more meaningful understanding of the acid experience. I was one of the lucky ones. I came out of my trip apparently undamaged. In fact, I had a good trip. I tried to recreate that trip on film. That's what you saw in the dream sequence earlier. You saw a young girl on her own trip. But since it was impossible to reproduce her trip, I substituted my own. It was authentic. You take a trip like that, knowing the dangers, for a reason. You want to know what all the excitement is about. You want to know what the acid trip is. Now I've taken the trip and I know what it does. And I believe strongly, I am convinced, that the dangers of LSD far outweigh any benefits. The scientists agree. They agree that the acid trip, the LSD trip, is just not worth taking.